When the sun lowers toward the horizon and the sky turns black, when lines blur and things are not exactly what they seem, when the normal makes way for the strange and unexplained, it's time to question what is natural and what lies beyond our understanding. It's time to enter the edge of the unknown with your host, Mark Henry.
Welcome, everybody, to the Edge of the Unknown. Got a great episode for you this time around. I think you're going to enjoy it greatly. A friend of the show, he's been on a couple of times, and it's going to be a blast to have him on to talk about what he does. But before we get there, if you have any questions for me or my guests, or if you would like to reach out to me with a comment, please email theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. And of course, find me on Facebook and Twitter. I can be reached there as well. I have received some correspondence about when's the next episode coming out? What's going on? You already did the one, and then when's the next one? Guys, I'm working on it. I've got a lot of really cool guests lined up for you, but I'm also knee-deep in the dead with my other YouTube channel, Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. So have a little patience. I've got some great guests lined up for you. We're going to be talking monsters. We're going to be talking aliens. We're going to be talking UFOs. We're going to be talking Bigfoot. Awesome guests, the best in their fields, coming up here on the Edge of the Unknown. In this episode, I welcome to the Edge Archbishop Ron Feyl. Receiving his Episcopal orders in 1979, he took up the not-so-popular ministry of exorcism. With over 30 years of experience, he established the Sacred Order of Saint Michael the Archangel, an order of exorcists with members across the globe, an international organization with members in 24 countries. You can find out more about what they do by listening to this podcast, but also by going to orderofexorcists.com. If you need their services, free of charge, they will get back to you. So again, check out orderofexorcists.com. And you know what, without going into any more of a huge, long introduction, let's just get right to the meat on the bones. Good evening, and welcome back to the Edge of the Unknown, Archbishop. It's great to have you here. How are you?
Right now, I've turned to this turning point in my life where now it's time for me to put myself out there once again. The information, as you know, I host 6 forums on Facebook.
Yep.
And so I'm constantly giving input to people who have issues. And I don't make any direct referrals because quite frankly, too many people have gone astray in the past, and I can't confirm anyone's calling. To do this, you have to have a calling from God.
Yes.
And there are people that will, receive holy orders, and then from there claim to have a calling, and no one really knows how genuine the calling is, only the individual. So, it's hard for me to sit in judgment of each person and then take a chance and refer a priest to an individual that may be having issues. So I've come to the point where I say, and in fact, this is my dialogue when I answer these questions, especially when someone's asking for assistance. I would say all of our members are actually members in our forum now on Facebook.
Nice.
And you are free to make your post and request for assistance. I have lead investigators and appointed clergy priests who are appointed exorcists who are on Facebook, and they're in my forums. So what could happen at this point is they can go directly to my members. Okay, since I'm no longer have my hand in the ministry, and even then that's not exactly the full truth. you never really retire from this type of ministry. Everything always happens, and there's a backlash, which I could say for your program. But the backlash in everything you do in life has a price.
Sure.
And everywhere you go, you leave a trail. And no matter what you're involved in, the past will always be there, especially when there's a traumatic type of experience that took place where there are supernatural forces involved. And so when that happens, you're literally leaving yourself, what you're doing is you're leaving breadcrumbs. And so from the very beginning, since 1981, I started leaving my breadcrumbs. So now I have all of the dark forces that have followed the breadcrumbs, and now I feel all the things that took place many years ago, where I'm constantly being attacked physically, where I'm physically feeling forces. I just went to the doctor just a week and a half ago, and from there I went into the hospital for testing because this was just not right. I mean, I was getting muscle spasms in my rib cage on both sides, and just simply not normal. Plus, I had a chronic cough, and I couldn't get rid of. I still have it, actually, but it's not as bad as it was. In any case, they took blood tests, chest X-rays, the whole 9 yards, and they gave me a clean bill of health. They said, in fact, the doctor said I'm in better health than he is. And which is like, which tells me, which I knew already that it was all, supernatural. It was all very much spiritual that was happening to me.
So
because of the breadcrumbs that I've left behind.
Let me ask you about those breadcrumbs. And we've had conversations about this over the years, and the times that you've been goodly enough to be on the edge of the unknown. Is it a good thing or a bad thing to leave those breadcrumbs? And the way I want to kind of word this question is, everything that we do is a learning experience. So maybe those breadcrumbs could be a reason that you get to where you're going, and you learn from what you've done by spreading those breadcrumbs. Or is it always a surprise that you've dropped the breadcrumbs and holy cow, something has caught up to you that you weren't even thinking about catching up to you?
Well, your first scenario was pretty right on. People do normally learn from their mistakes, and they learn from their past experiences. But when you're dealing with the supernatural, you're dealing with a completely different issue completely. I mean, it's like you are, in fact, in physics, they have this term cause and effect. When you do what we do in terms of in the spiritual world, we're dealing with the physical and the spiritual. We leave a trail, and that trail can be followed. And that trail is a permanent trail. That trail, it just goes on to the end of your life. No matter what you do in life, you put your signature in the universe. And when you're fighting this good fight I refer to as good versus evil, we are putting ourselves out there. Every person who has a genuine calling to do this type of ministry, we have to know, which we accept, that there are consequences. And sometimes the consequences can be so severe it can lead to early death. In other words, your lifeline, your lifespan can be shortened as a result of your activity in this type of ministry. And of course, the ministry I'm referring to is the ministry of exorcism. You're dealing directly with dark forces, and it's in your face. And as a result, this is something that we have to accept, those of us who actually have a true divine calling, because we believe that God will protect us, and God will protect us and will not give us more than we could handle in regards to trying to help someone else who's going through some severe issues like demonic oppression or demonic possession. These individuals are suffering physically, and spiritually. And as a result, my job has always been, for almost 40 years now, if you can believe that, in the ministry, my job has always been to profile the situation, to examine and give an assessment based on the information that I see and perceive as to be the truth. There's a whole psychological and physical assessment that's made in the process, because it's so easy to be fooled by, let's say, a psychosis that could mimic demonic possession.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know the difference. You have to know what the guidelines are. And as a result, and as I think we probably covered this before in the past,
sure.
I designed our organization and I recruited 3 psychiatrists. And the 3 psychiatrists are the individuals that would actually review the psychological assessments that that is, the victim would submit. Once the psychological assessments are reviewed, and the psychiatrist, the practitioner, will say, okay, there's no real reason why this individual should be experiencing this, or they might say that, well, there is. This individual obviously has a chemical imbalance, and these symptoms he's experiencing can be explained scientifically. So if that be the case, then of course you have a different scenario. And of course the reports would come directly to me. I would receive and review the psychological reports and the recommendations from the psychiatrist. And then I would look at the actual first contact interview that our investigators would have with the victim. And all this is captured on video. So, and then there's a 60 questionnaire that I designed like so many years ago. And as a result, I've had all the people in my organization, I've trained them to use the 60 questions to find out what their mental status is, what their physical status is, and if there's any outward manifestations that are actually taking place within their immediate environment. So all these things I have to look at, and I'll study, the tape. I'll listen to the interview. I will examine with, at least I will look at the victim and see if he shows any signs, physical signs of anything abnormal. And if that be the case, and if the psychiatrist, which of course would have read the psychological reports beforehand, if it coincides with what their recommendations are, then I have to make a decision as to whether or not we should proceed in this type of scenario. Yeah.
Let me ask
Pretty
you.
Interesting.
Yeah, let me ask you a question because you mentioned oppression and possession. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the two?
Sure. Demonic oppression is like an outside force, a dark outside force, let's say demonic, that will actually place a thought in your mind.
Okay.
And this thought would be so concealed in the subconscious mind of the brain that the individual would think that any bad behavior or any motivation that they would have to do something really terrible, they would convince themselves, at least from within their own reasoning, that what is being done is on their own accord. It's their idea to do this, and therefore they feel they're ready to do something that could be very destructive, very harmful. The list goes on. Mm-hmm. And that would be a demonic oppression. That's when the demonic plants a seed in the subconscious mind of the brain, and the individual is fed that information slowly into the conscious mind and doesn't even know that it was planted intentionally so they could cause destructive behavior. Now that would be demonic oppression. Now demonic possession is something totally different, because it's not only affecting the mind but the body. The personality of the demon will actually go into the individual, most of the time through invitation. And when the individual has this demon, the personality of the demon itself would start being seen by the body that would be the host. Now, at this time, family members would probably be scared out of their minds because they would see their loved ones doing odd things, like maybe, I don't know, climbing the walls, literally, or maybe levitating, or maybe becoming totally destructive by physically cutting themselves, or doing something that's, that's so out of their norm that it would be impossible to claim. And as a result, it's important that we see these things, we take the information and we examine it, make sure it's authentic, because if it's not, we could do more harm than good. Because if it is a psychosis, then, and I authorize in this case, now that I'm retired, I will say now the bishop of that jurisdiction authorizes an exorcism and has one of his appointed priests to actually perform the ritual and join the investigating team and carry this through. If for some reason the individual, the victim, is not possessed by any type of demonic entity, then, and it's simply a sheer form of psychosis, then what the priest would be doing would be making suggestions that would drive the victim deeper into their psychosis, which most of the time would land up in suicide. So we have to be extremely careful when we make this determination. That's why I have always had a support group in the psychological community, in the health community, and of course the cross opinions and support of clergy who have been doing this before it was even popular, if you will. And so it's an interesting scenario. There's another type of demonic possession that we haven't talked about, or maybe we have in the past, and that's demonic infestation. Mm-hmm. Now, do you recall me ever mentioning that to you?
Yeah, we have. I want to expound on that, but I have to ask this. I want to take a step back real quick, only because, and I think I've mentioned to you in the past that my second cousin is an ordained priest in the Roman Catholic Church. I've asked him about taking the rites of being an exorcist, and to be completely honest, I always bounce these things off of him. I think he thinks I'm crazy, and I know he listens to the show, but he was totally upfront with me and said, I was not called to do that. And you've just kind of mentioned that a couple of minutes ago to say that this is the kind of thing that you're really called to do. Before we get into demonic infestation, I want to ask you, Archbishop Ron Feyl, what called you to this? You could have done a million different things, I'm sure, in the church, but this is the thing that brought you to where you are right now. What was that?
Well, I'll tell you, it was my first supernatural experience. It occurred when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I was in the bathroom taking a shower, and a bright light came and it just illuminated the entire bathroom, almost blinding. It was almost blinding, and I closed my eyes, and I had what I refer to as a vision. And this vision was of something that was to come. I saw myself much older, wearing a Roman collar. That's a clergy shirt. Not as an exorcist, just as a clergyman.
Sure.
And at that point, I felt, and because of the supernatural experience I had, it left a permanent impression on who I am and who I was and who I am now. And it also gave me the assurance that 100% that this was from God and this was a calling. So that was my calling. Every person that has, and every priest that say that they have a calling to do the ministry of exorcism, they should be able to explain to you how God contacted them. How did they know they were called? And anyway, if they're able to tell you the story, then the odds are they truly were called to do this ministry.
Right.
But to receive holy orders and become a priest does not make you an exorcist. Okay, you have to first have a calling from God. Okay, once you have a calling from God and you did receive holy orders and you into the priesthood, then you can go to your jurisdictional bishop and ask, or rather tell him that you're interested in this type of ministry. At that point, the jurisdictional bishop would refer one of the bishops of the church who is an experienced exorcist and would assign the priest to this bishop, who would basically take him under his wing. And he would be the assistant, the first or second priest, or normally the assistants to the exorcist, who is in most cases a bishop. And then there's a form of training. There's actually an on-the-job training, if you will. First, they're reading the responses, okay, in the ritual itself. And as they get more and more exposed to this type of scenario, the bishop, who is the mentor, would know when they would be ready to go to the next level of being appointed as the diocese exorcist. And so if that be the case, the training could take anywhere from 2 years to 6 years. It just depends on the involvement, the interest, and how convinced the bishop is, who is the mentor, that you are ready for this type of endeavor. In most cases, the requirements to even become an exorcist within the church is you have to be mature. You have to be spiritually mature to a point of being pious, if you will.
Wow.
And knowing, what the responsibilities would be. This isn't taken lightly.
No, right.
And as I said, it all starts with a calling.
And I would jump in and say, I hear a lot of folks say, well, there's something weird happening here. They want to do a lot of ceremonies or the burning of sage and or this, that, and the other thing. A lot of ceremonies. Gosh, I've even heard about salt, and this is going to protect the room. And again, I'm not going to talk down to it because I don't know one way or the other if that works. But this sounds like it's a little bit more involved than just something that I might decide to do if something weird was happening in my house or with a family member.
This is a crazy analogy, but try to follow this, if you will. You own a house, and in the house you have a kitchen. And in the kitchen you have a sink. And under the sink you have this pipe. And this pipe for weeks has been leaking. And now the pipe has burst. And it's now needs to be repaired by someone who specializes in that type of thing, which would be plumbing. So the first thing you do is you look in the yellow pages or online and you call a carpenter. And so the carpenter gets your address and he comes out and he looks at the problem, but he doesn't quite know how to fix the problem because he's not a plumber, he's a carpenter. And so to get the training to be a plumber, you have to have a totally different interest than the carpenter has. So as a result, when you need someone to take care of a situation in a spiritual means, you have to call and make sure that you have the right person that has the right training and belongs to the correct union, if you will. They have to, and it all starts with this. You have lots of paranormal groups, and you have lots of organizations that will make a person an exorcist almost immediately if they join the club. And all these people, I would dare to say, would not have a genuine calling from God. I'm just saying, to be an exorcist is a long, long thing involved in terms of not only starting from your calling, but then seeking permission from your church leaders, your bishops, and then being assigned a mentor, and then going through several years of actual training and making assessments and things in this nature. And so, there's a whole big thing involved. If someone just cries out and say, and they decide to call you and say, I need an exorcism done, there's a demon in my house, a lot of groups would run out there and say, okay, we'll be right there. We'll grab our cameras and our sensors, and we'll bring a cross, and we'll be fully prepared to do this exorcism ritual. And then when a person does that, obviously they're calling a carpenter to take care of a plumbing issue. And if you could follow that scenario,
100%, 100%,
have to make sure that you have the right organization, an organization that's not going to jump at a drop of a spoon to actually do an exorcism, but an organization / church organization that's willing to do the investigating, the assessment, to make sure the person they're dealing with is not delusional, to make sure the person they're dealing with has no chemical imbalances and has been maybe a history of mental illness or something in that nature, or maybe just a person who just wants attention. So, wow. You have to first find an organization that could actually make an assessment and follow the process. And the process, of course, is to investigate the individual who's making the claim. Now, the way this works is we don't go out looking for people who claim to be or claim to have demonic issues. They come to us. A paranormal investigation group, they look for individuals, and they will go out seeking haunted places and stuff like that. We don't do that. What we do is we wait for someone to call us. And when they call us, believe me, they're dead serious. It's a major life and death situation most of the time. And especially if it's genuine, it truly is. And we don't jump the gun. We do the things by the numbers. We first say, okay, who are you? What your experiences are. Then we go through the questionnaire. Then we investigate and see online if they have experienced or contacted other groups, or maybe find out if they've ever been in a mental asylum, or which means it doesn't exclude them from not being having demonic issues, I might add, because there's quite a few people in those particular institutions that have all
Sure.
kinds of demonic problems.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that you have to be certain. You have to make sure that what you're dealing with is the genuine article, because if it's not, you can get that poor individual into a lot of trouble. Not to mention, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble, because things do happen. And that's where demonic oppression can also creep in, especially to those paranormal investigators who are just going into a place blindly and inviting a demonic entity in their space to see if they will see some kind of physical manifestation. That's danger. Like, remember the program, Will Robinson, where the robot lost in space? Danger, Will Robinson.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger, right.
Yeah, that was it. So, but, so there you will find hundreds and thousands of organizations around the world that will make claims of this and that. Some of them are very genuine. Some of them are not. Some of them are con men. Some of them are, I'll tell you, in the 40 years, close to 40 years of being involved in a full-time ministry of exorcism, I never charged anyone for a ritual. And it's another sign, too. If you go to somebody who claims to be an exorcism or an exorcist, or belong to a church that has a ministry of exorcism, and they want money from you, I would say turn around and walk out fast, because they did not get a calling from God. Maybe they're too busy looking at what their profit margin is for the week.
Right.
And they're going to charge you like crazy. Every ritual should be done free, because even as the scripture says, what's freely given is freely received. And we follow that example. So I've never charged for an exorcism ritual. Never charged because it's not mine to charge. This is a service that God has provided, and He's just using us as His vessels.
Archbishop Ron Feyl, my guest here on The Edge of the Unknown. We're talking about exorcisms and exorcists, and holy cow, what a wealth of knowledge we've already gotten thus far. We've got plenty more to talk about, and this is what I always do. I scribble down my notes, and I look over to my left and look at them. We still have to get back to a couple of things that you touched on, but one of the things that you just mentioned that I have to get to right now is the fact that people reach out to you. One of the things that I think is run rampant throughout paranormal talk, and actually I had a skeptic on last week and I brought this up to him, that some of the stories that people want to rely on, they always say the church wasn't there. We went to them. We went to our priest, or we went to whoever, our reverend, and they said we couldn't help you. I'm never so sure about those stories, because I can't imagine, after knowing you as long as I've known you, and knowing all of the folks that I've known in the church, anybody taking that kind of tack that just said, you know what, we're not going to be there for you, we're not going to help.
And that scenario, by the way, sorry to say, and sadly I say, it's very true. A lot of churches will
Is it really?
Volunteer, and there's a good reason for it.
Seriously? Okay, so I'm going to stand corrected here, and I can't imagine anyone doing that, but if that's a real thing, holy cow.
Yes, it's a real thing. The reason being is that every church does not have a ministry of exorcism. Every church does not support the idea that demons actually really exist in our day and age. And because of the science of psychiatry, lots of clergymen have come to the conclusion that the things that were shown as demonic possession in the past was no doubt some form of psychosis, and therefore there is no need to have such a ritual. There are a lot of churches that will not help you because they know, actually, honestly, they don't know too much about it. They don't know, not only that, the reality of what demonic can do and the existence. Now, of course, they know the scriptures, but when they're behind the pulpit, most of the time they're only talking about all the good stuff. The warm, fuzzy, friendly thing. That they never talk about demons. They never talk about that demons can actually invade your space and take you down.
Right, the scary stuff around the corner.
They never talk about demonic oppression or demonic possession. It's extremely rare. I would probably say very few would ever. Reason being is this type of ministry is a specialty. It's like the plumber. The plumber was trained just to do the plumbing. Now, I'm sure the plumber knows how to clean the sink. I'm sure the carpenter knows how to clean the sink and sweep. And I'm sure the plumber knows how to do that. But in terms of fixing the pipe, you need a plumber. In this real kind of crazy scenario, the exorcist priest is the plumber. And as a result, when someone goes to the parish, and if the parish has if they know of someone who has or knows a priest that may have experience in exorcism, or they may contact their archdiocese, they may do a lot of things. And in most cases, there will be an investigation, but the investigation can take a long, long time. And as a result, the problem goes on. Typically, I could tell you through our process, the whole thing takes, and this sounds like a long time as well, and again, it depends on the situation. It could take anywhere from a month to 3 months to actually remedy the problem. If the victim has what's referred to as a multiple demonic possession going on, the priest may have to be there with his team for many weeks, maybe even months, before he's actually satisfied that the person has been delivered. There's a whole process that goes on. So anyone that says, "Oh yeah, I'll be right there and I'll do an exorcism and you'll be okay by dinner," well, don't believe them. Okay, it's not going to happen that way. It doesn't happen that way. Not at all. The actual ritual of exorcism is the last thing that's done, the very last thing. That's after the investigations. That's after the doctors have examined the victims and the psychiatrist had studied their psychological profile. That's after all this stuff. All this takes time, okay? You're waiting for these doctors to make themselves available, to read the reports, and then have something sent back in regards to their recommendations. Just so there's a waiting time. That could be anywhere from 2 weeks to, a month. It just depends on how busy he is. These individuals are all volunteers. All our psychiatrists are volunteers. All our medical doctors are volunteers. Or all of our counselors, investigators are all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. This is not a for-profit organization. This is a non-profit organization. We've had our 501c3 for a long time, and as a result, the bishops that work autonomously now, presently, they have their 501c3s in operation, and where they're tax exempt and they're recognized as a religious organization or a religious corporation. So you see, everything has to be legal, and everything has to be done in the right order. And you don't want to go out and look for a carpenter that when you have a leaky faucet or broken pipe. You have to go to the right person, and that person has to have the calling at an early age, then has to be groomed through the church to be a clergyman, and then at that point he makes the request to the bishops, his elders, and asks them or lets them, informs them that they're interested in the ministry of exorcism. And then even then, there's still a few years after that before he's actually appointed as an exorcist. So you see, the whole thing is not, it doesn't happen like bam, like right away. It's a long process.
Archbishop Ron Feyl, my guest here on The Edge of the Unknown. We got to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back with more interesting paranormal talk, the best paranormal talk that you will hear anywhere here on The Edge of the Unknown.
For those interested in delving deep into the paranormal, why not look into the Paratech Store? Located at paratechstore.com, browsers will find the latest in investigative equipment, books, and more. Items go beyond technical equipment. Mojo bags, stone sets, and other curiosities await your exploration at the Paratech Store, paratechstore.com. Visit them today.
Looking for the best Japanese and Thai cuisine in Western New York? Then you have to visit Teton Kitchen at 415 Dick Road in Depew. From appetizers and soups, simple, special, big, and fusion-style maki, to sushi, sashimi, and tempura, you won't get a range of items like this anywhere. Hungry for more? Teton Kitchen offers a full dinner menu and kushiyaki dishes, as well as a huge variety of sake, wine, beer, both domestic and Asian imports. Owner Taka and his bride Kin are proud to boast that Teton Kitchen is Yelp's #1 rated restaurant in Western New York, and they welcome you for lunch or dinner 7 days a week with takeout and online ordering available. Visit TetonKitchen.com for their full menu, hours, and online ordering, or call 716-393-3720. Teton Kitchen, 415 Dick Road in Depew.
Itadakimasu.
Are you ready for something really scary? Stop over to the campfire at Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories on YouTube. Here's some of the most terrifying stories you've ever heard. Ghosts, monsters in the woods, stalkers, unexplained phenomenon, and more. And the best part?
All of the stories are true.
Got a story you'd like to share? Send it to Uncle Josh, truescarystories@gmail.com. Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories on YouTube, where fact is more terrifying than fiction.
The Hope Project of Western New York is a resource for struggling families often identified as the working poor. We assist individuals who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own, disabled individuals, households with special needs members, victims of domestic violence in transition, and our military families and veterans. The Hope Project provides our members with gently used clothing, household supplies and toys, as well as hygiene and cleaning supplies. We also make available specialty items like prom dresses and Halloween costumes. These items are provided at zero cost to our members. How can you help? By donating items at our storefront, 4545 Transit Road in Williamsville, New York, inside the Eastern Hills Mall. Store hours, Monday 10 to 2, Tuesday 11 to 2, Wednesday 10 to 8, Thursday 10 to 2, and Saturday 10 to 2. Closed on all school holidays. Clothing should be contemporary, free of stains and tears, and household items must be in good condition and in working order. We also accept grocery and department store gift cards, as well as monetary donations. You can also help out by becoming a volunteer. For more information, visit our website at thehopeprojectofwny.org or call us at 716-810-9156. The Hope Project of Western New York. Dignified help for those in need.
He's never met a Yeti he didn't like. It's Mark Henry on the edge of the unknown.
Okay, and we're back because that's all I have to do for that. So I want to go back to we mentioned oppression, possession, and demonic infestation. So the best way that I can actually ask this question is the way that we'll transfer back into the show is me introducing you again and then asking you about demonic infestation and something else you brought up about invitation. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Are you okay with that? Okay. Perfect.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent. So hang on. We're going to count back. 5, 4, 3. Back here on the edge of the unknown with Archbishop Ron Feyl, we're talking about exorcisms and the good work that he does. Holy cow, what a wealth of information we've already heard tonight. But I want to get back into this, Ron. The difference between, we've talked about oppression, we've talked a little bit about possession, demonic infestation, and something you brought up in the last segment about invitation. I hear this all the time with stories that I'm sent on my other podcast about kids playing around with the Ouija board and things that you and I have probably talked about in our other shows, that someone asked something to come into their realm, their life, their world, their house, whatever it may be. Let's talk a little bit about infestation and how people can actually draw this sort of thing into their life.
Well, a demonic infestation is something that has to be assessed first. Demonic infestation can also be referred to as a haunted house, where things in the house are, certain things are happening, certain sounds are happening, maybe certain things, people are hearing certain sounds and feeling quite strange, like if somebody's staring at them, or maybe they're hearing things crashing along the interior walls, or maybe things, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, by the way, because there's so much that could go on. And so what a valid investigation, a paranormal investigator and his team have to do is first look at the house, examine the house, treat it like if it was a demonic possession. Okay, and that is, if you're dealing with a demonic possession, you're dealing with a person. In this case, you're dealing with the house. So it's a demonic infestation. So you are going to make an assessment to see if it truly is a demonic infestation. So the first thing they do is they examine the house. When was the house built? Does the house have any history? Has anyone ever died in the house? Has there ever been some kind of traumatic experience? Or has anyone ever experimented with rituals, dealing with perhaps maybe the black arts, maybe doing things that would not normally, be done in, I would say, in a Christian church. And let's say that, all this is being done in the house, and you have to investigate, find out if these individuals, or rather the house and the people that live in the house have ever been involved in such a thing. Once you examine the house, you should have somebody on your paranormal team who has knowledge in electrician. He should have knowledge in circuitry. Should know a lot about construction. There are a lot of things in the house that could mimic signs or sounds of something that might be there that you can't see.
Ron, I'm just going to jump in right now. You are totally making every skeptic who listens to this show completely happy right now.
Yes, well, so it's something about the truth. You have to make sure that what you're dealing is real.
Right.
And if you can't explain it, after you've examined it, after you've given it a good assessment and you've looked at it, examined it, used all your tools to actually make a proper assessment, and you still can't see what's happening, why these things are happening, then perhaps it is something real.
Right.
And then that's the next level. But
that's what I'm calling you. When I figure out that it's not the house creaking, it's not the the house making funny sounds, it's not the wind. Okay, I might need Archbishop Ron Feyl to come over here and take a look at this.
Well, first I would say that I'm not a qualified construction person, or a person who would know about housing and the house frame and the electrician and all that. So what I would do is I would call my team, and my team would consist of people who have experience in construction, people who are electricians, people who know a lot about attic, the frame of the house, things that could creak, things that could actually cause hallucinations, such as fiberglass. Let's say you have an attic full of insulation, and they used to use these chemicals years ago, and in a long period of time, you can actually breathe in all of these various things, these particles, which can alter your whole perception in regards to how you think and how your brain operates and how you perceive things. And at that point, you can start hallucinating and seeing things move when they're not actually moving.
Right.
It was not so much because it was the dark entity or some kind of demonic force, but rather it was because of the house.
Right.
And the way the house was constructed. If there's like a power source, a major power source in the house, and as a result, the average, your typical paranormal investigator, they have instruments that could basically see where the energy is coming from, electrical energy and things of this nature. They have heat sensors and stuff like that. There are things in the house that can actually create and simulate these things, which means that their instruments will go right off the tube, go right off the scale, because they're close to what's causing these things. Okay. So after my team has done all of that, then I look at the people who are living in the house. Now, the people living in the house, are they involved in the occult? Do they play with Ouija boards, crystals? Do they speak to spirits? Do they invite the darkness in to enhance their psychic abilities? All these things are factors. So then you start talking to the people that live in the household. After we've ruled out everything in the house is okay. There's, the roof is intact. There's nothing that's vibrating that would mimic something that would be supernatural. Once all that is ruled out, then we look at the people. And then the people will tell us what the story is. And the more information they give us, the more information we could make an assessment in regards to what is good information, what is useless information, or what is information that seems to be fabricated. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people that will do that. However, let's just say that everyone in the household, they are straight as an arrow. They have their stories are consistent. They have seen these things repeatedly in the presence of one another. And they could attest to the fact that these things are happening, and they may even have some photographs or some kind of video, to basically collaborate these things. And as a result, if that happens, that's fine. Okay, then we look at that, and then we make our assessment. The final assessment is when in this case, it would be the bishop who's in charge of that jurisdiction. He would review all of the information. He would rule out all the things that are in the norm and all the things that would be outside the norm, that would be in the supernatural realm. And then they would look at the people in the house, if they've been hurt, if they've been pushed, if they have any physical marks on them, if they have anything going on. And then if that's be the case, we have to look further into the psychological makeup of the individual, because a lot of people will scratch themselves to hopefully, to create the scenario, and it's very dishonest for people to do that. So we have to be very thorough, and we have to use a very analytical approach in everything we do. So the house has to be clean, has to have no other reason, and it's all solid, normal. The people have to be also solid, normal, okay, in their testimonies and how they collaborate with one another, and their stories have to match and things of this nature. And after we do that, then we might send somebody out to do house blessing, maybe see if we get further reaction, see if what we're looking at is actually genuine or if it's not. So to make a long story short, a true demonic infestation is when somebody opens the doors to the demonic, and they can either do it intentionally or unintentionally. It's always through invitation. Always through invitation. If you know anything about the Ouija board, the first thing you do is you ask the first question, and you know what the first question is, right?
Yeah, it's always, are we talking to somebody? Is someone here with us? Exactly.
And that, when you engage in a conversation like that, guess what? You're inviting them. You're inviting them to exchange words with you, and as a result, you're opening up a door that you may have regret at a later time.
Archbishop Ron Feyl, my guest here on the Edge of the Unknown. And I feel so bad. And I did this last week too with my guest. Orderofexorcist.com. That's where you need to go and get information for what we're talking about tonight. Again, Archbishop Ron Feyl. And hey, look, if you're having an issue, these are the folks that you want to check out. And if you just have any questions, reach out and see what you can find out. I think there's a lot of misinformation, and tonight we're doing what we need to do, and that is clear up some of the misconceptions that we might hear about on this channel, and as well as my channel, Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories, when I do get the creepy stories about demonic infestation. Ron, let's go back. We're going to jump into the Wayback Machine. Your first case. Can you talk a little bit about what your first mission was as far as being an exorcist?
Well, I can tell you my first experience as an exorcist in training, if you will. I'm assisting the exorcist, and
Sure.
that I am in a state of, and only being human, of course, I'm in a state of being not knowing exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
And the unknown can be very frightening. But when you start seeing things that start showing you that everything you heard was not only true but more so, you're in a state of shock, and of course at that point you're reading the responses from the Roman ritual, and you're losing your place because your mind is being gathered. You're looking at the room, you're looking at the victim, you're seeing and you're hearing things going on and off. You could hear certain things, and certain things would be blocked out, and it's a whole physical thing that you have to go through. Okay, a lot of people will hear this and say, "Really? Come on." Well, I got to tell you, anytime you are in the front of something that you don't understand and it scares you to death, believe me, all the physical things that take place in your body, through your normal functions that take place in your body, will be altered. You'll start breathing heavy. Your respiratory will go up. Your blood pressure will go up. Your mind will be in a state of chaos, where it's like you're like in this big fog and you can't even see what you're doing. Probably one of the most frightening things, more so I think than actually seeing the victim going through what the victim has to go through. You see, the person in the room, whether it's a priest or assistant or an investigator, all of them are going through something that is very traumatic, and as a result, they're basically fighting their own negative things that are happening in their mind. We've had people run out of the room, out of the ritual room, because it was too much to actually handle. And it's not so much of what was going on in regards to the actual ritual, but it was everything else around the environment. And you can hear a pin drop. It's so quiet. And then all of a sudden you'll hear a stream of firecrackers. And so you jump up, and you're amazed, and you go, wow. And you start examining all your own senses, because you're in overdrive right now. And so you're at your highest peak, and you're in a state of confusion, even though you know why you're there. It's just the experience of taking it in. That is a true scenario.
Were you frightened away from that when that first happened? I mean, was that something that you actually said, geez, maybe I should have found a different calling? And I know we've talked about that personal calling, but did you ever question that at that point where you were like, man, wow, what have I gotten myself into?
Well, if I was a plumber and I had to address the pipe, and the pipe burst and it was like water all over the place, I could probably say that to myself and say, well, did I choose the right profession? Maybe I should have been a carpenter. Or, since we're talking about exorcisms and a divine calling, it's not the same thing. You have already made a commitment to God. It's not, you're not changing your profession because you're scared. You're going through this whole experience, and it's more of an education for anything else. You're getting desensitized to it slowly as you're more and more exposed to it, which makes you more equipped to do what you have to do. and that is to have a clear mind, a steady hand, and control your breathing and heart rate, and just relax. There's a whole physical thing that goes on from within yourself. So to answer your question, if I was a plumber and that happened, yeah, I'd probably say maybe I chose the wrong profession. But as an appointed exorcist priest who has a divine calling, you can't say that. You just have to take it, and you have to learn from it.
So when you're going through this, we're moving on from that, and you're going to be called on again. What do you take from the first experience into the next experience, and from that second experience into the third, fourth, fifth, down the line? How do you accumulate the skill set to deal with the stuff that you're going to have to deal with, because this is your calling and this is what people are going to be calling you on to help them with?
Well, like in everything in life, you have to crawl before you could learn to walk. And there's always a forward motion involved. You have to have the strength, you have to have the will, you have to have the desire to continue in order to progress into the state that you're supposed to be. It's all part of the natural progression. So here you are. My first experience, and I shouldn't tell you this, but heck, we're just talking as friends, and heck, this is for you and I, so here we go. My first experience is I urinated in my pants. And I stood there because that's how terrified I was. I didn't read the responses. The first priest did. I just stood there, and I just was like a statue. And it was very uncomfortable. Stayed there for 6 hours standing in my own urine, which is something I don't really like to admit.
Okay, but being fully clear, Ron, being fully clear, because this is a podcast and I'm going to be editing this. Do you want this to be in, or do you want me to take that out?
I really probably shouldn't mention that.
No, it's okay. I don't mind knowing it.
You think it adds to the story?
Ron, as a friend and a guy that has known you for a while, and we've had these shows, I'm not going to leave that in if you don't want me to put that in. That's up to you.
You could leave it in because it's all. It shows that I'm being upfront and honest.
Totally, but that's.
I'm not exaggerating. In fact, sometimes the cold, hard truth is more terrifying than the.
Okay, I just
than what you're doing.
But I'm just telling you right now, if you want me to edit that out, I would be more than happy to. If you want to leave it in, I'll leave it in, and we'll just continue on with our conversation. I just don't want you to say something that you might come back and say, "Hey, oh gee whiz, I wish I hadn't said that." That's all.
You know what? Just leave it in.
Right on.
I've never told anyone that before, so just leave it in, and it just shows I think it just heightens the sensation of being terrified, and being terrified to a point where you can't even move. You're
right
like
on.
A statue.
Right on. Holy cow! I can't ever think of a time that I was that frightened. But at the same time, I don't think I've ever been in a position to be that frightened. I can't imagine anything that you've seen, that you've gone through, and that you've helped other people to deal with, as far as the things that you do with training folks. Holy cow. I talk to you over the internet. I talk to everybody over the phone. I can't imagine 1 second. I mean, I've seen a lot of weird stuff, but I can't imagine being that afraid.
Yeah, to make a good comparison to that type of how frightened that could be, if you could imagine yourself walking into the morgue and seeing all these cadavers laying on the slabs, and all of a sudden one actually sits up and turns and faces you. Okay, at that point, I think you'd be pretty horrified, wouldn't you? I know I would.
My wife and I were watching one of those CSI or whatever those shows are, the other night, and I said, as a coroner, what's the worst thing that can happen? The person might wake up, but we know that's not going to happen. But I can't imagine if that actually did, and that's the line of work that you're in, where that might actually happen.
Well, I have lots and lots and lots of stories, and these are stories that go back from the early '80s, and quite a few of them are really horrifying. And as a result, some of them I would share for educational purposes, if not anything else, and to just expose the truth, because a lot of this stuff isn't spoken about. It's not openly anyway.
Why is that? Why is that, Ron? Why is it that no one wants to talk about this sort of thing that you're involved in? Why is it that we just kind of want to brush it under the rug and say, yeah, like I mentioned before, where, the church wouldn't help us out. Well, maybe they did, but no one ever wants to talk about this sort of thing. Why is that?
Okay, a lot of things. First of all, it's not about me, but it's about the victim. The victim has and is trusting our confidentiality. And when a person is going through this state where they're literally deteriorating physically, where their flesh looks like it's falling off their bones, where they're no longer in their body, but something else is. And as a result, they wind up doing horrible things, and that would be the demon that's in them. Would do nasty things, that would do things that would make anyone, look the other way and be totally embarrassed that it was you. You are the victim, and people would look at you, and then of course people will talk and say you're crazy, or they might say that didn't really happen, or they call you a liar, or there's a lot of things that can go on. So confidentiality is so important. It's not so much of, I'm telling you the story, but I'm not giving you any names. I'm not giving you any cities. I'm not giving you addresses.
Right.
We
don't need
very,
that.
very, bland about this, But in terms of details, in terms of what the victim looked like, what the victim did while they were possessed, what happened in the room while the person was in a full mode where things are flying and then people are getting injured, and in some cases, rare cases, people are dying. And so when these things happen, these are it's understood that everything is confidential, and it would never go out, even though some of these cases have been publicized.
But not even anecdotally, where you might say, "Hey, this happened in I'm just going to throw this out there, the Los Angeles area." You don't hear the stuff that you're talking about. I mean, and what you're actually saying is things that we do see sensationalized in film and media, but these things actually do happen, but we don't really talk about them and let everyone else know. It just baffles my mind to why we wouldn't actually let anybody else know, because the fact is there might be other people feeling the same things that are afraid to talk about it, but if they did know there was a resource to go to, like Order of Exorcists, that they would reach out and say, "Hey, we need some help."
That's why our website is still up there, even though I'm retired. That website is for information. It shows you the teams I have in 24 countries, the members, the clergy. They could contact them by name. They could go on. They're all on my forums here on Facebook.
Yep.
And as a result, they could contact them directly if they have issues. And so it's up there for educational reasons. And I come on these shows because there's a very dangerous element that's out there. And I'm not referring to the demons. I'm referring to people who believe they have the power to perform an exorcism, and that they will do this and offer their services, of course, at a fee. And in doing so, they not only put themselves in jeopardy, but also the victim. So I, if anything else, I'm just basically trying to be the voice of reason to say that examine who you're going to approach, and make sure that you have a plumber, a genuine plumber, to take care of the leak that you have in your sink, and not a carpenter, because there's a lot of charlatans out there. There are a lot of people who just who are just, they have their own illusions, and they just feel that they like to live out their dreams. And believe me, this type of ministry is not, it's not a job. This ministry is a life. This is your life, the life of the people that you're trying to help. And so it's very serious. When the movie The Exorcist came out, and you saw the actress Linda Blair turn her head around and all that other stuff, that was all done for entertainment. But that was probably the only movie at that time that actually shed some light on what could possibly happen in a ritual. Excuse me. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting scenario.
Why did you stay with it, Ron? I'm sure that you could have followed a different path halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, when you were deciding that maybe I'm going to retire. You probably could have done a number of different things and been called into a lot of different paths. Why did you stay with this one? What was it that kept you there? What was it that made you stay with helping people who are having these issues?
It was the incredible benefits you just would not believe. When your employer is the creator of the universe, and he gives you all the benefits, providing you're doing your job, believe me, there's no other thing you want to do in the world. You are driven to do it. It's not a job. It's a love of helping people that have problems and issues that they can't go to anyone else with. We're all specialists, and the reason we do this is we have this divine calling. It's the very first thing. It's the divine calling, then the education, becoming a clergyman, and then being trained as an exorcist based on your mentor, who would be a bishop. And that's the only way to do it. I mean, the proper way to do it. All the other ways, you send $25 and get a certificate in the mail that says you're an exorcist. I have bad news for you. It's not going to help you too much when you're facing the demonic, and when it's a real demonic case. No, don't stay away from those people.
I love that. Call now. Certificates are running out for $50. And send a self-addressed envelope to. Okay, yeah, terrific. Holy cow!
Funny, over the years, I've had some trolls that have trolled me.
Sure.
I had 2 of them. One passed away recently, and so the other one I think is in prison, for crimes that he's did. Anyway, they put stuff out there on the internet, and anything that goes on the internet, it's out there forever. So, off the top of my head, out of the 500 links or articles about me that you'll find online, you may find 3 or 4 or 5 of them that would be negative. calling me a big phony, calling me that I'm getting rich off these people, even though I make it perfectly clear, even on the website, no charge. There's no charge whatsoever, but they think I'm getting rich. It's just so many things, and it's okay. I never had to address any of these trolls, okay, because why give them the attention, And so and time, of course, goes by so fast. I'm still involved in this battle of good versus evil. I still fight demons. I'm still fighting all the things that I've done in the past. They seem to follow me, and they have left marks. 5 years ago, I almost died in an exorcism ritual.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that was a wake up call for me to say slow down, because working 100 hours a week is not a joke, especially when you're in your 60s. So now I will interact with people in my forums on Facebook, and I'll post up things that I feel might be interested in terms of talking about the demonic and God and faith and miracles and things of this nature. So I post these things up, and then I have my members that will post their suggestions, and they post their articles, and and this is the extent of what I do. I the radio interviews, I will probably continue to do that, because this is a good way to get the word out. And so in reality, I may not be actually out there actually performing rituals, but I am in a very real sense performing them almost on a daily basis within my own space, because the trail is real, and there's always a price that has to be paid in this universe.
I will say this. You and I have always been in close contact. Two of my claims to fame over some of the really big podcasts out there, and shows as well. I had you on before you were on Coast to Coast AM, and I had you on before anybody from Joe Rogan's podcast is going to ask you to come on, because I'm guaranteeing he's going to reach out to you. You have always been completely accessible. Our conversations on the air have been awesome. Our conversations off the air have also been awesome. You have always been upfront with me. You have always been honest with me. And when I reached out to you this time around to say, hey, do you want to come back on the show? And I told you that it was going to be in a little bit of a different format. It was going to be in podcast format. You said, yeah, I've got time to do this. That means a lot to a guy like me, who is not some huge celebrity. It's not like I'm on this massive radio network. It's a bunch of people who want to listen to a person like you and hear you tell your story. And that is unbelievably gracious. And I have the utmost gratitude that you would actually spend a little bit of time to talk to me.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. And I need to also mention real quick.
Sure.
Since I am retired, my name is Ronald Feyl Enright. So that's the name that you'll be seeing, and now and in the future. So it's Ronald or Ron Feyl Enright.
Okay, should I actually change that as far as the way that again, this is because we're recording and I'm not actually going live. Do you want me to introduce you that way? Okay.
Just say
Ronald Feyl
Enright. Archbishop Ron Feyl Enright.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. I will make sure that we change that up. Okay, so the last question that I have for you, and this is kind of a goofy, funny thing. I don't know if you are familiar with the comedian Bill Burr. He's one of my favorite comedians. And a couple of weeks ago on his podcast, he had the question, if you do become possessed, how would you know you were being possessed? And where does your body go if you are possessed? Do you have, and this is a goof, and we don't have to share this with anybody else, but I thought it was just such a funny question because I was like, yeah, if I was possessed, where does my body go when I am possessed?
You know what? The best way to make this wonderful comparison is, you've heard of the term hijack?
Absolutely.
Okay. Also, when a person steals somebody's car, they are hijacking the car, or there's another term for it. What is it? Carjacking or whatever. In any case, what demonic possession is that exactly. Your body is being hijacked. So you are in the back seat and you are gagged, and there is nothing you can do. The personality of the demonic will come out and manifest itself in the body. So what it is, it's a hijack. It's hijacking the body and literally wearing it off, wearing it out until it's totally and completely broken. That's physically, that's mentally, and as this happens, you can, in some cases you can actually see the flesh fall right off the bone, because they are abusing, as most carjackers would probably do. They would race the car, and to its maximum, and maybe crash into things or whatever. Well, that's exactly what the demonic would love to do to a human host, especially that host that invited them in to begin with. Bam, the demon has full control of the controls of your body, and you are the hostage, and you're in the back seat, and you're watching it all. Interesting, when a exorcism ritual is done and done correctly, and the person is actually free from the demonic, they will have very, very few recollections as to actually what took place. The reason being is, in the brain there's this thing called the critical facility. It's a defense mechanism. It will actually suppress any terrifying, horrifying, traumatic things that could, in the long run, disrupt your normal lifestyle. So most victims have no memory. At least if they do, it's very glimpses of what took place, because it's such a mental assault. It's an assault mentally and physically. The spirit is always strong, because the spirit comes from God, and that spirit can and always will be victorious when the right process takes place. I don't know if that makes any sense. Does that make any sense? Did I say that right?
I think so. I think it was perfect. What advice would you give to anyone joining the clergy and putting on the cloth who might want to go down the same road that you did? What would you tell them to expect and what to prepare for?
I would first tell the young clergyman to first examine his heart and examine everything that would be considered wholesome within himself. This has to be done not because it's some kind of plateau you want to reach, but it has to be done because you actually have a divine calling. Then, of course, the next big step is to pray and have God actually give you a sign, give you something that you know that is where the suggestion did not come from you, but it came from an outer source, so like it came from a divine source. And if it leads you to that path to become involved in the ministry of exorcism, then you will know it. And that person would also be able to repeat how he was called by God to do and to be an exorcist. Because every exorcist knows exactly the exact time of when their calling occurred. It's a real thing.
Amazing. Like I said, my cousin, Father Eugene, said that he was not called that way. And a wonderful priest. He's a great guy, but never had that calling that you had the strength for. And I know that, and gosh, over the years that we've spoken, I know you've been beaten up. You've had issues. It has not been easy. And gosh, the fact that you still did it for as long that you did, I don't know what else to say, but kudos to you. And I appreciate the fact that you are still out there and willing to talk to me and others about this that, a lot of people really don't want to talk about. It's a testament to your faith. It's a testament to your calling, and it's a testament to your strength. I really appreciate you doing this once again for the Edge of the Unknown.
Thank you so much, and to God be the glory. I love to shine my flashlight in all the dark corners of the world and just share my information, because it's not really mine. It belongs to God.
All right, folks, that'll wrap it up here on the Edge of the Unknown. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you haven't heard episode 681, I just cut that a couple of weeks ago with Skeptical Inquirer's Ben Radford. Good listen, a lot of good feedback on it as well. And if you have a suggestion for a guest, or you've got somebody in mind, or maybe you are somebody that wants to be on the Edge of the Unknown, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. Everybody, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Great guests coming up. Thanks to the sponsors. And again, thanks to you, the listeners. You're what makes this show go. Everybody, be excellent to each other. Take care of one another. And we'll see you right back here on the Edge of the Unknown.